So
Sure.
what are some of the things that Colton might say that you agree with, and what are some things that you disagree with Colton? So when you bring this up, are people like, oh, whatever, or are they like, oh yeah, we got to do something about this? Like, what is the
Generally, they don't care until they know that the number is 6 digits long.
6 digits?
Yeah, total, to be fair.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Shintaro Higashi Show with Peter Yu. Today we have a very special guest, Nicole Stout. She's a four-time consecutive national champion, current on the international circuit, representing the United States. Also getting married in 16 days. Congratulations. And she's on the USA Judo Board of Directors as athlete representative. And I hear you are ruffling some feathers behind closed doors. Is that true?
Closed doors, open doors, every window, every rooftop. I am relatively controversial because I'm not afraid to say what I feel and what I see.
Okay. And you're up for election now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're fighting for your position.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of your things that you want to see happen in the next 4 years?
Well, part of my major reason for running is I am genuinely concerned in the direction that the current people in charge want to take us into 2028. When I asked our CEO what was the first thing he would change, considering you haven't medaled or even come close the last 2 Olympic cycles, and those have been the last 2 Olympic cycles he's personally oversaw, what would he do different with an Olympic cycle we're hosting in the U.S.?
Yeah, very important.
And his first answer was to cut the athlete budget.
Okay.
That was his first answer. And I couldn't believe, I mean, this is someone that is not an athlete. This is someone that has never done judo. This is someone that's put on a gi exactly once to receive an honorary black belt. He's never expressed an interest in judo. He's actively been derisive in terms of referring to the U.S. judo culture and our coaches, and as if it was somehow less than compared to other sports. And I think we need an entire overhaul, because if that's the first thing you think we need going into our Olympics, you're clearly not fit for the job.
Yeah. Well, you did say something. So the whole thing I'm on this election thing is because I saw your video on Instagram and Facebook. And then you did say like the CEO's job is to raise money. And I had a conversation with Jimmy Pedro, who's also running up for election for the coach's position. CEO's job is to raise money. And whether an athlete, wins the Olympic gold or not, sometimes the CEO doesn't have a lot of control over it because he's not the guy in charge of the athlete's coaching or the athlete's fund or, what is Eddie Liddy's position called?
High performance director.
Yeah. He's not the high performance director. Yes, they all should work together, but, yes, he should raise money. And you made a point that he was supposed to raise an X amount of dollars and then he didn't. Is that correct?
Didn't. Yeah. So in his initial interview, and then I've talked with several people that have been on the board and were at his initial interview, and the reason he got that position over someone we all know very well is Corinne Shigemoto. She was one of the last 2. Her and Keith Bryant were the last 2 considered for CEO.
Wait, Corinne was up for CEO position?
Yes.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that I found when I joined the board 3.5 years ago.
Yeah. What's Corinne doing now?
Being told. I believe right now, she obviously has left USA Judo the last couple years, and right now she is working in tandem with the IJF to help run the World Veterans in Las Vegas. So she's been instrumental in that, and unfortunately USA Judo is entirely uninvolved. So what I learned 3.5 years ago when I first joined the board was, 1, of course, there's a learning curve. And 2, oh my God, there is so much we don't know. And no one willing to tell us.
Yeah, I never found out any of this stuff until recently. I started digging a little bit. And then, I spoke to Chris. I spoke to Colton on this podcast. He's going to be on. It's going to go live soon. Jimmy Pedro, you're on now. And then Matthew Parker.
Parker,
right? Yeah. So I'm making my rounds now through the thing, and I'm getting a lot of interesting detail. And I know you don't see eye to eye with a lot of the people on the board currently, correct?
Sure. Yeah. About
I want
half.
to hear more about that. Yeah, yeah. There's no secret,
half.
right? Yeah.
About
Okay.
half.
About half. Okay.
Yeah.
So the board is split into two right now.
Basically, yeah. It's two halves.
And it's not even over the issue of like, all right, what should we do this Olympic quad or like all these things that it's not like the stuff, you know, you haven't even gotten to that. That's what Colton told me, and that's kind of nuts. But somebody was removed recently from the board.
So that's also a controversial topic because in our bylaws, I want to say 6.56. In our bylaws, it says that a board member, can only be removed with cause by a 2/3 total power of the board. So we have a 12-person board. I believe that is 8 votes or minimum 7 for sure.
Okay.
But so essentially, they initially did this vote for this man. The vote failed 6-5 because they said he couldn't vote for himself.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then because that vote failed, they sent him to ethics and grievance under the guise of having ethics and grievance suspend him, which was basically seen as a workaround. His lawyer attended that session with him. They heard him out, and then ethics and grievance basically stalled out and never made a decision.
Is it because he was in an independent position and you're not supposed to be an athlete or a coach if you're running for that position, and then he is an athlete?
And he has so when he was first put into the independent role by Mark Hill himself as when he was president of the board. Okay. He initially ran, I believe, as the at-large, but because one of the independent positions on the board requires someone have an extensive history and experience in finance, and he is a CPA for one of the top companies in the world. Okay. So he very much fulfilled that qualifying, and Mark Hill had the nominating committee at the time look at the fact that he had a life membership with the USJF or A, I don't remember. Okay, and he was a current veteran competitor at the time. And they said because it's not based on any like financial gain. He's just because in our bylaws it says that there are guidelines. So it doesn't say it's a rule you can't be an athlete or a coach or whatever. It says that the nominating committee considers these guidelines when looking at a person. Okay. And basically it's whether they think, are they receiving some kind of, like if they're a coach, would they use this board position to potentially get more athletes to their dojo, because they're a board member or something like that, or are they making money as an athlete leveraging their position on the board, things like that. So that was considered at the time. Nominating committee came back with, he's good. Mark Hill put him in the position of independent. Then the next year, because we're talking I think like December, so then January comes and we need a new chair of the board because Mark Hill leaves. And Mark Hill is now the co-chair of the Ethics and Grievance Committee.
So who gets to choose who's the president of the board and the chair of the board?
So the board votes.
The votes. Okay. So anytime, like let's just say theoretically, right? You're in the room, all right, we need a new president. Nicole, you're up for the thing and let's vote, and then you could potentially be the president of the
Yes. Yeah, it's that simple.
And then but Joe Reagan is now gone.
Right. So everyone voted unanimously for him to be the president, blah, blah, blah. Year and a half goes by. He's up for his, I want to say 6th degree, black belt, whatever. And one of the stipulations is that along with your safe sport and everything else, you have to have your basic coaching certification to be a 6th degree black belt. Yeah. So he does that, blah, blah, blah. Nothing comes of it until 6 months later, we have a board meeting to review Keith Bryant's performance. And already whispers in the wall, it's not going to go well. Yeah. And apparently at some point, and this is coming from Jeff LaForce and Dave Johnson, 2 other board members themselves, saying that they came across an email from Joe Reagan talking about looking at other options for CEO. Yeah. And they disagreed with this because they really like Keith Bryant. So before we could even start the meeting, I just remember being so confused because all of a sudden, Jeff LaForce cut in before we could even start. He was like, I need to talk with Joe right now on the phone. We were all like, what the Like, that's never happened before. That's so weird. I remember we were all just making awkward conversation waiting for them to come back. And then Joe and Jeff came back. And then Joe went to continue the meeting. And all of a sudden, completely cut off. Jeff LaForce is literally screaming about how he has this coach's certification. He sent an email to everybody. He should disappear from the board.
So are you pro Joe Reagan or no?
I am in support of Joe Reagan maintaining his position because I don't feel we followed the bylaws in removing him.
So, I mean, are you allowed to say who doesn't want him there?
Sure. So it's very, all of our minutes should contain our votes. And I think it's very fair to say that the people that voted to remove him from the board would be people that want him gone.
Why?
So,
if they're going through digging the bylaws, how can we get rid of this guy? They're definitely planning someone like a takeover.
It's because they know that he was a part of the half of the board, that includes me, that wanted to see the CEO changed. And their half of the board likes the CEO.
Let me ask you a question. Who likes Keith Bryant right now? I'm just curious.
Sure. It's those same people. So it's Jeff LaForce, Dave Johnson, Shannon Hondel, who's the other independent. It would be Ben Goodrich, our Paralympic representative, Marty Malloy, the other athlete rep, and Colton Brown, the other athlete rep. They've all, when we all gave our ratings, they all rated him very positively. And then the side of the board I sit on, our half, I guess you could say, was me, Ari Miller, Jerry Navarro, June Chi, and Joe Reagan. We all were in favor of we need to cut this guy loose and find somebody better.
Okay, so when does it go to a vote whether or not to keep Keith Bryant on or not?
Well, so in the last board meeting we had, they refused to let Joe Reagan into the room. And even though he was invited to the meeting, because that's standard practice, and they refused to let him into the room because they said that
Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, because you do 2 in-person meetings a year.
Yes, we do 2 in-person in May and 1 in November. So the one we just had literally last Friday was a Zoom meeting. And while he was invited like a normal board member, Keith is the one that hosts the rooms.
Yeah.
And all of our meetings also are supposed to be open. And only the last 2 meetings.
I could go into the meeting and listen in on this?
Yes.
Oh, wow. How many people listen in on it? I'm just curious. There's 12 people on the board.
Normally 0. But I've been...
That's crazy.
Yeah. But in our bylaws, you can see every meeting is default open to our members.
But I can't say anything.
No, unless we ask for questions or something. But you can... The important part is that in order to cultivate a culture of transparency and accountability, our members have to be involved. But part of the issue is that for whatever reason, the board in the past wasn't interested in having the members see what they do.
Yeah.
And it's only been since I've been on the board that apparently we've ever had open meetings. Our first one was May, the in-person meeting. I told as many people as I could last minute to come into the room and watch so that you can see exactly what's... And it was so embarrassing. It was 2 hours of a complete cluster. It was awful. But at least we had people to witness. That's good. And so the last 2 meetings, well, I guess I shouldn't say 2.
Wait, let me ask you a question. So if I go to President's Cup in November, right? I'm not gonna. Yes. But like if I go, I could just walk in and be like, oh, I'm here to sit in on the board meeting and nobody would have an issue with that?
Yeah, well, they'd probably ask you, who are you? And just to make sure you're a member.
Yeah.
But
I mean, they know what I am, but
anybody can sit in, any member can sit down and listen to what we have to say unless we go into what's called executive session, which is where only the board talks to each other about something really like a safe sport thing, like a really private thing.
Are you a lawyer by trade?
Me?
Yeah. You said you got full-time. What is it? No?
No.
I'm heavily involved in the political side of this stuff. I mean, you're very...
I didn't used to be, but as I've been on it longer, every year I've seen myself more and more into it because I was realizing that no one else was doing it.
Maybe a career in law after judo.
Yeah. That's like you're actually the 5th person to tell me.
There you go. That's your calling right then and there.
I'll think about it. It's really expensive. I gotta think about it. I gotta do the judo thing first.
That's true. Well, okay. So Keith Bryant, you don't think he raised money? Is there a way for the board to be like, all right, listen, man, you got 2 months to raise $500
at any
grand,
point,
or you're
at
out.
any point they can do that.
Yeah.
So in the last meeting, his contract was supposed to end at the end of September.
It's end of September right now.
Right. I was advocating we let him go.
Yeah.
Bring in Corinne Shigemoto to run the ship in the meantime. Okay. Then after the election, let the new board, the new people that the athletes and the coaches and the referees and everybody have gotten to voice they want in charge, let them pick whether they want to continue with Keith or if they want to hire somebody else, and let it be like that. And lots of disagreement.
Yeah, I bet.
Especially because now they won't let Joe into the meeting because they're saying that he's default off the board, even though that doesn't exist.
I'm trying to get him on the show too, to kind of like talk to him about it.
Yes.
I should. Yeah. And I'm a little bit more...
I would try to get every board member on here.
I want to, because this is the thing, right? Like, obviously I have my, there's factions in US Judo. You know what I mean?
Course.
I'm friends with Colton. I've always been for a very long time because we're both New York, New Jersey guys.
Of course,
I trained at Jimmy's for a year during the period of leading up to the 2012 Olympics. So it's like I've come from that sort of group, and then a lot of the other side I'm invisible to. Like, I don't know those guys. I don't really know what's going on, and I don't want anyone blaming me. Like, oh, you're only platforming these guys. No. And partially that was also why I really wanted you on this thing, because I was like, all right, I know Nicole has some alternate views about this stuff.
Yeah.
So the people who you kind of want, maybe you can advocate them to like come on the thing so they could have their voice. I'm trying to be as neutral as possible.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be a journalist.
I think everyone's viewpoint is important to hear.
Very important.
Because we all, one, interpret things very differently.
Yep, that's very true.
And two, we all see different futures for judo, and we all see different ways to get there.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm someone that's very linear. I tend to be very linear. So if there's a rule set, we abide by the rule set. And if someone is not abiding by the rule set, now I have problems.
That's true. Okay, so Colton came on the show, and then we had a very good conversation, and his thing's going to air next week. So yours will probably air right after, or one or two afterwards. So what are some of the things that Colton might say that you agree with, and what are some things that you disagree with Colton? Because you guys sit on the board, you guys have conversations, you guys must know what the other person's thinking.
Yeah. I mean, Colton's a bit more difficult because he's one of the more quieter board members.
Colton quiet, really?
I know. I didn't expect it either.
Yeah.
But for the most part, he is active in every vote. Speaking wise, says man of very few words.
Interesting. Who's the loudest, by the way?
I'm sorry?
Who's the loudest?
Probably me.
No, who's second loudest?
Probably Jeff LaForce.
Okay, I gotta get him on. All right, so you and Colton views.
Yeah, so where we agree in every time there's ever been a question about a tournament getting points, a tournament getting approved by USA Judo, we've always...
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Generally anything that is for athlete funding, being able to fund juniors, cadets, that kind of thing, we'll agree. We disagree on a lot. And we used to be, I don't know that we can still call each other friends now, but we used to be friends when we traveled together.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
I'd say the board has probably ruined any friendship we may have had, because, and I understand that part of it is my fault because I was very active in speaking against him running in the first place.
Why?
Because he is a paid official coach by USA Judo on international trips. And
you're very much so a conflict of interest person.
Very. I've never made...
Okay.
I've made zero, literally zero. Yeah. Only ever spent money to USA Judo. As you know, judo is expensive as hell.
Very expensive. Yeah.
Are
you a member? Are you a New York Athletic Club athlete or no?
Am I what? Sorry.
A New York Athletic Club athlete or no?
No.
No.
So everything, any money I do get is either because I worked or sponsorships. which luckily this year's been pretty good about. But
good.
It's all corporate. It's me. So it's I'm very strict about any kind of conflict, especially with the athlete directors, because there's extra in our bylaws that dictates that we can only get money in our capacity as athletes. It says that specifically. So anyone that reads that can interpret that getting money as a coach is not in the capacity of you as an athlete.
Sure. What about seminars? I think Jimmy talked about this too. It's like, people shouldn't be
seminars Olympians for sure. I can see argued.
Okay,
for sure.
You could. So it really is up to interpretation.
Yeah, but I would say seminars for sure is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because it straddles the line between coach and athlete, so I can see that. It's the getting paid to coach specifically. It's not like you're there to compete.
Okay.
You're there to coach.
Yeah.
You've been retired, and you're sitting in a coach's chair and you're being paid for it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So that was I opposed him running at all, and that probably sent our friendship down the tubes very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, you're my friend.
Which I don't blame him, because I probably I would have
Yeah.
probably also been offended. Frankly,
Yeah.
we've never talked about it, but it's very easy to tell a difference in how you interact with somebody, and that difference was made very clear very quickly, like immediately.
Yep.
So he ends up he gets elected. Blah blah blah. I'm also on the audit committee. So that means I'm also privy to a lot of financial information that gets to the board eventually anyways.
Yeah.
But I've discovered over the last few years that no one actually has been looking at these things. They've all just been like, yep, good, fantastic, next. It's just done. But especially in the last year and a half, I'm not a finance person by nature. I've started, but I do find it fascinating. Yeah. And so I've started a MBA in finance, and
good.
I've been able to talk to a lot of people that do have expertise in that field, and they help kind of guide me, because you show me an Excel spreadsheet of numbers initially, I don't know what I'm looking at.
Well, that's what the MBA is for.
Right. And so between that and between actually getting to talk to people and kind of have them walk through it, and just so much self-study, I probably have read the bylaws through completely at least 50 times.
Damn. Wow.
It's a long document. Yeah. So I've started doing that with our financials, and I started realizing, one, the audit committee is not being sent everything. So if you actually went through, you'll see you're like, okay, there's a whole bunch of money, and it's just other. And it's like, okay, what is that for? Yeah. And so it's been this, and that's part of the reason I'm also disenchanted with our CEO, is because I've spent literally over a year now trying to get those documents for the audit committee because we're supposed to do an audit of our finances every year. Yeah. And just because I'm trying to take the reins and do a more an actual audit, be more thorough, I'm getting a lot of fight. You'd think I was pulling teeth. It was it's really bad.
In a nutshell, are you saying that there's something to be hidden with the way money is being spent or misappropriated?
I see very concerning things in our budget with no explanation.
Are you allowed to talk about it?
I'm allowed to talk about what I see. I think where I'm restricted is specifics. So
don't incriminate yourself by saying something that you're not supposed to, and then
please. I get sent to the ethics and grievance committee probably once every other week, so it's fine.
Okay. All right.
Because at the end, for me, it's okay. It's okay if because the pendulum has always been in everything is hidden from everybody all the time.
Yes, and I like this now you're an MBA, you probably know Ray Dalio and his radical transparency thing. So I'm for that. That should be. Right. But yes, we're radically transparent, but no one knows, and there's zero people watching in on these meetings. That does good for nobody, really. So if you guys are listening, this is a pretty big reach for this podcast. If you guys are listening, you could listen in on the board meetings of USA Judo. And then you could call Nicole and be like, hey, this is my view. Can you make it known that, and then we could impact, right, the decisions by, that's what you guys are, elected officials, right?
Yeah, we're representatives. for a reason.
But you're the athlete's representative specifically.
I am. But at the end of the day, all of us on the board represent the wishes of the 12,000 members that we have.
Yeah, that's too small, 12,000. Come on. We need at least 100,000. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, I have a whole thing where that's a number that gets bragged about a lot, and then I get angry every time because I'm like,
I'll tell you this.
Tiny.
This is what bothered me with Keith. I said, hey man, how's it going? I saw him at the New York Open. And then I was like, how's USA Judo doing? And he goes, well, given that our membership was 8,000 before, now membership 12,000, we're doing fantastic. I'm like, where's that 8,000 coming from? It's like right around COVID time, pre-COVID or whatever, and I was like, well, you're comparing the numbers now to COVID times? Get out of here with that stuff. What about 10 years? 20 years? I mean, I really have no clue what the numbers are. Do you?
Yeah. So
maybe you do.
The issue is that the numbers, so I've argued this forever. Our numbers are being misrepresented. One, because they exist on our website. But if you look at the fine print, right, because it says year, number.
Yep. Okay.
The number, if you look at the fine print, it doesn't say, it's not a consistent, anyone that's ever done statistics knows you have to keep the things the same. Yeah, so if I'm looking at, 2023, I'm expecting, December 1st of every year or something.
Yeah.
If you look at the fine print, it says it's the best number from the entire year.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Why did they do that? Why did they do that?
Yeah. So you can, and that's public. That's on our website. It says it.
Yeah.
It's the best number from that year. And Keith, a few years ago, implemented temporary memberships. So when we broke the agreement with the USJA and the USJF, in order to recoup some of those memberships for tournaments, we said you can buy, I think it's like a month or something, a super cheap 1 month membership. Right? So right before senior nationals, you're going to get a bump in those memberships. And then that's when you pick your number. Well, so now for 2 weeks, so for 2 weeks, it looks like you have 1 million members, right? And so that's the number you put next on the website. But then, a month later, it goes back down to the number from last year.
Yeah. Wow.
So I've been arguing that these numbers are being misrepresented, but that hasn't got me very far.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah. So it's on the website. Anyone can check for themselves.
All right. So what are the things that you are really opposed to the board right now?
We have 4 different board members that are receiving money. They have not declared these things as conflict of interests, which means that we are technically in violation of Texas nonprofit law. And if they found out, we would lose our nonprofit status, which means USA Judo would not be allowed to be the governing body under the United States Olympic Committee, and USA Judo would cease to exist. Ta-da!
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's my big beef right now.
So, what do you mean receiving money from US Judo as coach?
2 of them as coaches, 2 of them as referees.
Okay. You want to elaborate on that?
I
mean, there's 4. You said 4 people on the board.
There's 4.
So
we're talking now if we accept that Joe was removed from the board, more than a third. More than a third of the board. There's a 7-page, really long audit committee report that was signed off unanimously by the audit committee, stating their concerns because the nominating committee released a statement saying it was a laundry list of people of the 4 board members and then 10 billion people from all the different committees that are receiving money, that technically in our bylaws you cannot receive money even on a committee unless you get express permission from the board. And then board members can't receive money at all. Okay. So
yeah, but receiving money at all from those duties is different from receiving money as a referee, flying to a tournament and then refereeing.
Yes, but right? The issue is, right, Texas nonprofit law doesn't give a shit about the difference between a referee and someone that's, all they see is that a board member is getting paid from the very organization that they sit on the board of. Right? That's what they see. Now, it does say they cover... Right? It does say...
Yeah.
Sorry?
No, so when you bring this up, are people like, oh, whatever, or are they like, oh, yeah, we got to do something about this? Like, what is the...
Generally, they don't care until they know that the number is 6 digits long.
6 digits?
Yeah. Total, to be fair.
Combined.
Combined, between the 4, over the last 3 years. It's 6 digits.
That's a good amount of money.
So normally it's because you're allowed to have reasonable expenses paid for.
Okay.
Right? You're allowed to, if you have a flight paid for so that you can get to the Nationals meeting. Totally allowed. Your hotel covered, that's fine. Okay. You know, reasonable stuff.
Yeah.
But when it's at the point that it's roughly 3 years, we're talking between 4 board members, and no other board member has gotten any money. Right? We're talking 0. Yeah. But more than a third now, but 4 of them have received an amount that adds up to a 6-digit number.
Damn.
That is concerning.
It is, yeah.
And when you look at that, you start saying, okay, surely at some point this starts to look like a conflict.
A little bit, yeah. Oh man, oh boy.
So
you're saying remove those 4 people?
Yeah. What I have been trying to say is...
So who are they?
What I've been trying to say is have the 4 removed and let them go through the nominating committee, announce their conflicts, have them reevaluated, and then rerun. Have those positions open to run.
Colton's one of them, because
yes,
you already mentioned that. You gave that.
Marty's another. Junchi
Marty's
is
not on the board, though, right?
Marty's on the board.
Oh, she's on the board currently. Okay.
She's rerunning.
Okay, she's rerunning.
Yeah. Yep. So Marty and Colton, and then Junchi and Jeff LaForce.
Okay. So Chris Round's position, where he vets the candidates whether or not they're eligible to run for it, like, he didn't catch any of this stuff? Have you spoken to him?
He was on the document that did catch it, actually. He did. He was part of the reason why any of this got kind of shown in the first place. Nobody had any idea. And then part of the issue was our board is continuing to be non-functional. And the nominating committee, which includes Chris, basically sent us this long list of concerns saying, what do you want us to do? And then the board, the board that I'm on is worthless and never replied. And so what they had to then decide was, do they enforce it on their own without board support? Or do we do what we've been doing this whole time, even if it's against our own bylaws? So they chose the second.
Okay. Wow.
And so they said, whatever, because we can't get a response from the board for guidance. They went with, we'll go as we've been doing, even if it's against the bylaw, so we don't have any direction, and we'll just let everybody run, and we'll figure it out later.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's kind of the direction that it's in, because our board continues to be non-functional. All
right, so do you have a slate of people that you want, like if you have an endorsement, like, hey, these are the people I'm running, these are the people that you want me to, what does that look like?
In terms of athlete representatives, it's me and Ari Berliner. He's been on the board previously, and he has always been a really big proponent of support for athletes. And he is even more present on the international circuit than I am, and so he's out there.
I saw him at Worlds. He looked pretty good against that Russian kid.
Yeah,
he did good. Yeah.
And what I love is I believe we need more active, just like we need more active participants from our membership to be involved in our governance. I want to see more active athletes on our board, because it's totally different when you've been out of it for a few years versus you're literally still in it. You feel the immediate effects of any decision being made. And you're around everyone that is currently also feeling those effects. And it's easy because very few athletes have ever called me and told me an issue. But so more than I can count have come up to me at a tournament while we're waiting, to be called into the shoot, to be like, I didn't like this, this, and this, or I'm having a problem with this, this, and this. Can you? And then absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that like FaceTime and just being there and also knowing that you're affected by everything is a really helpful viewpoint. And then just having an active male along with me, who would be the active female, I think brings a good balance as well.
Okay. All right. So who else?
I believe for the coaches, I'd like to see Ari Miller reelected. I think he's done a very good job of speaking up and doing his best to refer to the bylaws. I'm a stickler. I love if there's rules, I follow them. Okay. I don't like making exceptions.
Okay.
Because for me, that just starts creating.
So you're pro Ari Miller over Jimmy Pedro.
Yes, because of the bylaws. Just frankly, bylaws. If you are getting any kind of money or have any kind of contract at USA Judo, you should not be allowed in our own bylaws to run.
So American Judo system is a conflict of interest, you think, with USA Judo?
Massive. We're talking like an extremely, extremely, extremely lucrative contract. It's extremely lucrative. And I've had to sit through several meetings where they've tried to have, as any business would, get more contracts with us and more money and all of this. And I think having one of the co-owners of that company with a very lucrative contract with the organization be on the board is a clear conflict.
Are you able to say how much that contract is worth?
Well, what's funny is that's one of the documents I've been trying to get from Keith Bryant. I can't actually seem to get the original contract from him, which is funny. Because as a board member and as an audit committee member, I have a right to see it. And I've only been verbally told. So from what I can see in the finances, they get a significant amount every year because they are getting a percentage of our membership every time. And then they also get a flat amount every year. And it's a lot of money. It's a lot.
It was about 10 grand, 20 grand?
Oh, way more. Way more.
Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, no. You need to add another digit. Yeah. It's a lot more. So when I say lucrative, I mean lucrative. So it's like, it's not like he's getting like $10 a month for this. This supports a family or two. Like it's significant.
Wow. Interesting. Wow. Okay. So you're saying it creates a conflict.
Yeah. For sure. Absolutely. I would, if someone told me that if Nicole, you make, I don't know, we'll just say an even $100,000 every year from your Nicole Stout Judo contract with USA Judo, you shouldn't run because it's a conflict. How can I possibly argue it's not?
So who's in charge of like telling them that it's a conflict? And who's in charge of that? Chris Brown?
Well, the first group that is in charge of vetting that is the nominating committee.
That's Chris Brown.
Yes. But again, the nominating committee, and I don't know if it's because Chris Round is on, and I believe new to the committee or whatever, but this is the first year they've actually caught everything. And we've realized now...
Chris is thorough. He's thorough. If anything, he's thorough.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I assume that's the entire reason the concern came out at all. But when you have a precedent set, even if it breaks the rules, you're going to follow the precedent. And that's what they've done because how can I blame them? They've heard nothing from the board. Yeah.
Okay. So who else do you want? Like, who else is your people?
Trying to think.
I would obviously Jason Morris, right? Because that's your coach.
I just remembered.
I like how you brought him up last. This guy,
I'm tired. I forgot. Yes. I obviously vouch for Jason Morris. Yeah. He was on the board once as an athlete. Now he's coming back, maybe 15, 20 years later. And I think that if anyone knows how to stir change, it's him. And I think that there's nothing more USA Judo needs right now than a change and overhaul. Because obviously what we're doing right now isn't working.
Why Jason? How Jason going to make a difference? I'm curious.
Jason is someone that is not afraid to say exactly what he thinks, and
but will he execute though? That's the question.
He's definitely someone that likes to tackle things come hell or high water.
I'll tell you this, right? because there's Jimmy Pedro and Jason Morris through that era, and they're very easy to compare. And then, so that contrast to me, it's very apparent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Jimmy, Fuji Sports, Hitachi Sports, Fuji Mats, American Judo System. He's an American businessman. He's an entrepreneur. He's, all these things, right? And then, so when he got on the podcast and he's like, well, listen, these are the things I'm going to get done. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. These are the execution points and that, right? Jason, what is his plan? Obviously, he's not running from the same position. And even Jimmy endorsed Jason. But I'm curious to see, like, all right,
Well, they're both friends, but they're both very. They have skills in different areas. Jimmy is great at running and marketing his business. Yeah. That is what he's really good at.
Very good.
And what Jason is good at is developing athletes. He's incredibly good at developing senior level athletes. We just having the Jason Morris Judo Center be half of the Pan American Championship team for the last 2-3 years, I think is a good indicator. And all of us having come from all kinds of places, but having had the opportunity now to train with Jason for almost a decade. Yeah. And I've trained literally all over the country. Every dojo I can imagine, I've visited quite a few, looking for what I needed for that kind of next step.
Where did you grow up? Where are you originally from?
Well, I started judo in Oklahoma.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I
not quite known for judo.
I know. There was literally, I think, like 2 clubs total. Yeah. There might still be just 2 clubs. I think it was Pat Burris's and Brian Piccolo's.
Oh, I know both of them.
Yeah. So, they're in Oklahoma. I visited a few places in Texas. I ended up moving to Florida. I trained at for 6 months. I trained at Panthers in South Florida. Yeah. Visited Budokan a couple times. Visited Kitsusai tons.
Yeah.
I trained mostly at Sasaki Judo for a few years.
Okay. Yeah.
And I trained at a whole bunch of different places in that area, but I was with Sasaki Judo, and then I traveled to the OTC in Colorado while that still kind of existed, and I traveled to Jimmy Pedro's. I traveled to Mile Quanchi in Rhode Island for a couple of years. I traveled all over the place just trying to like figure out. I don't know. I was looking for that kind of that instinctual feeling of, okay, this is what's going to take me to that next level, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, so I got that. Very, very nice. Yeah. So if I'm listening to this, right, and I'm obviously first time really having a conversation with you, I've always known who you were and all this stuff. But if I'm listening to this, I'm like, okay, Nicole is a stickler for rules. She likes the bylaws. She's up for re-election. When she gets in, it feels to me like you want to clear out all the nonsense, and then everyone should be there for the right reasons, right? Yes. No conflict of interest. But what about taking the judo to like a greater heights of like more membership for the athletes, coaches? Like, what are your views on some of the non-bureaucratic, non-political side? You know what I mean? To grow USA Judo, what are your views on that?
Yeah, well, I think, unfortunately, a lot of it does stem in the bureaucratic side because the fact that we're bleeding money in all these different ways, it comes directly out of the athlete pool. Like the budget that comes out of is the same budget that goes towards athlete funding. Yeah. And that needs to be prioritized. Like at this point, I would say in terms of getting athletes to be able to medal at the 2028 Olympics, right? We're probably not going to grassroots create an Ono in 4 years.
Probably not.
It's probably not going to happen. So in terms of giving ourselves the best shot at 2028, we need to be supporting the athletes we have now. Yeah. The juniors and the seniors particularly. Yeah. I think we should be absolutely doubling down and instead of we've only ever reduced the ways you can get funded. It used to be top 30, and it became top 25, and it just got more and more limited.
Let me ask you a question. So if there's more medalists in Olympics from the United States, we get more money from the Olympic Committee?
Yes. Yeah.
A lot more or a little bit?
A ton more.
Really?
Our money has been going down every single cycle because we haven't done anything.
Yeah, that's true.
If we especially in our own we're already going to see a little bit more money because of an Olympics in our own country. That's just natural.
Yeah.
And that's part of, I am assuming, but that's part of why I assume so many people are fighting so hard to get on the board. And I imagine it'll be even worse in 2 years when the other half of the board cycles off. Because we're naturally going to see more money. That's just a natural progression. But if we got any medal at all, oh my God, our money would probably get doubled, honestly.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it's a huge, huge difference. So the future of USA Judo is absolutely could hinge on if we could get a medal. Because if what we're receiving and what the USOC pays us is easily 70-80% of our total revenue.
Yeah, that's what they say. What is it, like $800,000 or something that US gets from that? Yeah.
Well, it used to be. I don't know I don't think it's that much anymore. But
really? Yeah, I mean
because it's been reduced massively.
Yeah, but to run an organization like USA Judo, it should be 5 million, 10 million. You know what I mean? Like what? Does swimming get? What does US track get?
Oh,
yeah,
right.
More,
but they're also winning.
That's true. We gotta get winners out there. We gotta get some champions out in the US from the US. So
I think short term, what we need to be doing is overhaul everything so that we can focus on what matters, and that's fund the absolute crap out of our current athletes so that we can find our athletes that are in the country that have the best chance and have the most experience being able to compete against their international competitors.
Yep.
Right. Then we get more funding from the USOPC.
Yep.
And with that, easily can now start funding and being able to work on grassroots judo once that bag has been secured, basically. In terms of trying to not lose my train of thought, sorry.
No. In terms of athletes funding, growing judo as a whole in the United States.
Oh, right.
So grassroots comes after the winners.
The other thing we've massively failed to do is any kind of marketing at all. Past our social media page, there's nothing. Literally nothing.
No, I mean, because I'm in judo. I don't know if you know, I'm in judo. This is what I do for a living. I have 2 dojos, I do this podcast. I have a YouTube channel. I do everything, tons. I'm a judo guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No clue about any of this stuff. Chris is like, you got to election this. And he's talking my ear about stuff. And I'm like, election.
Because none of it is promoted. Nothing. And the fact that we aren't taking advantage of the popularity of BJJ, and the fact that we're not taking advantage of just
what about my 500,000 per month reach? I get 500,000 eyeballs on my platforms alone.
And USA Judo,
and you know what? I offer my services. Services many times. I called Nicole. I called Keith. Hey, let's do something. I have this massive platform. I'm more than happy to share USA Judo stuff. And guess what?
Yeah,
they said, you know what? We don't have a budget for you. You want to do it for free? And I was like, no.
Of course not. Who wants to do anything for free except if you want to be on the board, apparently.
That's all you. You have fun with that,
I don't know. I don't know.
But definitely a marketing issue. They should definitely dedicate some. And I know they just hired Hannah Martin for social media.
They did.
And she's a Jason Morris gal, so you must be pro Hannah.
Yes. But I disagree with her running for athlete director.
Yeah, she is running.
I agree with. I've
always lauded her
career.
Is it because she's getting money from the U.S. Judo for social? Yeah,
it's conflict. I have very straightforward views.
Yeah.
If you have a contract or you are getting money directly from the organization for something that is not within the capacity of governance or anything else stipulated in the bylaws, you should not be allowed to run, because that is what our bylaws say.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Great. We are teammates. She's recently retired, and she's doing a phenomenal job with the social media.
She's doing it. I love that.
But
so where do people find you to be able to voice their ideas and concerns to you, maybe even lobby you, right? Where do they find you?
Sure. I am on every social media platform under the handle Nicole Stout Judo. NicoleStoutJudo.
Great.
I try to keep it really simple. My email is NicoleStout@iClown.com. You can if you still can't find me, then that's a problem, and you should
definitely a problem. Yes.
Tell someone close to me, and they'll let me know.
I want to say thank you to Drew, Jason, and Levon for sponsoring this podcast. Just a little plug here, commercial here. JudoTV.com. You know JudoTV.com? They also sponsor this thing. discount code Shintaro, HigashiBrand.com. Nicole, thank you so much for being here. You were absolutely amazing. I'm excited for more content, because I'm telling you, you started this whole thing for me. And, there's going to be some criticism like, oh, Shintaro, I don't want you getting involved with the politics and stuff. But I really just want to kind of get both sides out. And I've never really expressed my opinion on who I'm going to vote for and whatnot. You know what I mean? I just want people to have their place to say these things. And then for USA Judo members to be informed, right?
Yeah.
So voting happens when?
October 7th. I believe it ends October 10th, but why wait? October 7th, make sure you go into your email if you've registered and make sure you have a ballot, because if you don't have a ballot in your email, make sure you reach out to any of your representatives, any of the athlete representatives, be it me or Marty, Colton, Ben Goodrich, and make sure you get a ballot, because...
And it's anonymous, correct?
It is anonymous. It's completely anonymous. No one will ever know who you voted for. It gets sent to a third party. I didn't like the last third party. We have a brand new company that works with the USOPC with other sports, real sports. So they're sending all of those votes go directly to them. The board, none of us ever see it. You just vote. They send us back who won, how many votes, blah, blah, blah. That's all we see.
Great. That's exciting stuff. Nicole, thank you. You were awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.